Welcome to the Week 5 overview video for EDSS 379. So this week we are officially at the halfway mark of this unit. So we have 4 more weeks of teaching. And the focus of the next 4 weeks will be geography. We'll be looking at the geography syllabus. It feels like we probably haven't had enough time to look at the history syllabus. But this week in particular, we will be reflecting back on that syllabus and continuing to look at it in consideration of the topic that we'll be looking at this week. Many of you may still be working on that first assignment. The second assignment will be opened by next week at the latest, so you can keep an eye out for that. So this week we will be focusing on values education. And as I've said before in one of the overview videos, this week is sort of a bridging week between history and geography because values education really isn't specific to just geography. In fact, values education is something that's really important in all the HSIE subjects, even the ones that students do in years 11 and 12. So modern history, ancient history, economics, business studies. Values education really is a big part of the learning that students do in all of our subjects. But of course, here we're talking about primary school, and we are focusing specifically on history and geography. So in the readings for this week, which I'm going to remind you is listed here in Unit Information and Resources. So if you're going into this block, you are opening up the unit schedule, and this will tell you the readings that you can do. So we are in week 5. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the unit, the readings decrease significantly from that first week, being there were a lot of readings. So this week we have 2 readings, more specifically just one from the Making Humanities and Social Sciences Come Alive. We're looking at values education and social justice. I've had quite a few students asking me about being able to access the textbook in the reading list. It is listed in the reading list, but it is not accessible in the reading list. I have tried to contact the publisher to have digital access, but unfortunately that's not something that they offer. I have told them that it is something that students would appreciate having, so they're going to look into it, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen. So my advice is that I'm hoping that you've got your hands on this textbook. You can request, I think, 1 or 2 chapters from the library. I'm not too sure. I have requested to put chapter 11, which is the Porter and Fussell chapter, into the reading list, so keep an eye out for that. And you can get used textbooks as well. I know a lot of students sell them once completing this unit, but it is a great textbook. And it is really, especially, relevant for primary teachers, of course, because that's the focus, but a lot of great resources. Out of all the textbooks that I use in any unit, this one is probably the most relevant and probably could be put to good use. It's got a lot of links to great resources that you can use in the classroom when you go into teaching. So, yep, these are the readings for this week. I think this textbook is actually available in the reading list. You can access it and look at it, but only a few students can look at it at a time. So that's just keep that in mind if trying to access that one. So again, we are looking at values education. So why do we look at values education? Why do we have a whole week designated to this topic? Well, I would suggest that values education is probably one of the most important things that we teach in the HSIE HAS teaching areas. A lot of what we teach is asking students to reflect and consider society and the choices that have been made either in the past or in the present and possibly into the future. And this is when we think back to the aim of the history syllabus specifically, and you will see in the geography one, it's quite similar. We want students to be active and informed. And how do we do that? How do we get our students to be active and informed? And a lot of that is through values education. And it's through the teaching of the different topics which you will be looking for in the activities for this week in the syllabuses. It is through the different topics and units of work in history and geography where students will be asked to consider their own values, attitudes, and beliefs. So again, addressing why we designate a whole week to values education, just a couple of points that I wanted to make. Just going to share one PowerPoint slide with you. So, and I probably mentioned this somewhere along the way, and if not, then it's really important here this week that I do. There are 3 essential themes that are a part of teaching HASS or HSIE, and these are human rights, social justice, and critical global citizenship. So really our units of work are really founded and underpinned on these 3 themes. And if we think about what values education is, we can think about how that informs these 3 themes as well. So just a couple of quotes that I wanted to read as we're thinking about these themes here that are on the screen. And these quotes are from the Gilbert textbook, which is from the recommended reading. So values education figures even more centrally in the general capability of ethical understanding, as building ethical understanding throughout all stages of schooling will assist students to engage with the more complex issues that they are likely to encounter in the future and to navigate a world of competing values, rights, interests, and norms. So we can think about active and informed citizenry, that's threading through there in that quote, and also about the future and what we need to be thinking about in society: human rights, social justice, and critical global citizenship. So how we're connected to each other in the world. And one more quote that I wanted to read to you. Valuing is a process of feeling, thinking, expressing, and acting through which people make and apply judgments about what is desirable or undesirable, good or bad, moral or immoral. The process may be conscious and considered, or unconscious, automatic, or habitual. And sorry, one more quote as well. Valuing does, however, need to be a process that engages other people in empathetic, tolerant, and open-minded ways in the collaborative search for the best resolution to values issues. Empathizing with others and being open-minded about differences are important parts of this process. So those quotes that I've just read to you are things that we're going to be thinking about this week, because in the activities this week, I'm going to be asking you to look at both the history and the geography syllabus and look at the different topics and units of work and thinking about where values education is coming through. Values education is great because it, and this can be difficult for some students, especially the younger students. It's inviting students to really listen to what others think. And those opinions and ideas may be quite different from, other students' ideas and thoughts. So it's asking students to open our minds to different perspectives. And we focused last week a lot on perspectives. So this week really ties in quite well. We're thinking about perspectives and empathetic understanding, which is a key concept and skill in history. All right, so last week, again, as I said, we looked at teaching from various perspectives, a lot of great conversations in the tutorials, and some, responses coming up on the discussion boards. So as we move into the geography syllabus, you'll see that perspectives is also really important in geography, although it's more prominent in the history syllabus, but it's something that we will continue to consider. So this week, again, as I said, the discussion board questions and in the tutorials, we'll be looking at the different syllabuses and different topics where you can ask values questions. So when you are watching the lecture for this week, be sure to take note, I believe at the end of the lecture, where I mention about values questions. These are questions that you are going to be designing in your second assignment. So it's something to definitely take note of and be sure you understand how to do. We'll also need to be thinking about different types of values that we may sort of impart on our students, that there are certain values that perhaps we do need to transmit to our students, but there are also values that we are aware that our students may have different from us. So we can talk about those different types of values. If there are basic values in society that we do need to transmit to students and what those might be, and also ones that maybe perhaps don't need to be transmitted. And the difficulties that we face, especially as students come from different families and what those values might be. So that sort of tension that we might feel in the classroom. So as we move into next week, where we're looking at the content, skills, and tools, I've uploaded the geography dissection video in this section. It's also in recordings. So you should have a look at that between this week and next week to become more familiar with that, because we will be working with that syllabus in the tutorials. And of course, it'll inform your second assignment as well. You'll be working with the geography syllabus. So as you're working on that first assignment, if you haven't submitted it already, if you're looking for some examples on learning activities, there are a few different places that you can find these examples. In the second lecture, so this is in inquiry learning. If you watch that lecture, you will see that there is an example of an inquiry sequence. It's the toys example. And you'll know from understanding the active model that there are 6 different stages. Each of those stages are a set of learning activities. So we've got 6 different learning activities in 6 stages of the active model. So as you're going through that lecture, you can see an example of a learning activity basically as being one of those stages. So I think each stage is on a different slide, and I sort of talk a little bit about the type of learning activity that you would do in that stage and what that would look like. That's an example there. In addition to that, if you want something that's more concrete and written, in the assignment 1 section, in assignment 1 information, here's an example of a learning activity here. So I used the geography syllabus as an example. So you can just see that, that's not written in dot points, but you of course can do that in dot points. This just shows a simple learning activity. Now, in terms of what's the difference between a learning activity and a lesson, the younger the students are, the more aligned a learning activity and lesson are. So you would be less likely to do more than one learning activity the younger the students are. The older the students are, the more learning activities you may fit in. That's a very general, very, very big generalization, because even in, for example, years 8 or 9, you may only get through 1 depending on the skills that the students have. It depends on a lot of factors, the time of day, the time of year, and so forth. So it may be that a learning activity is an entire lesson, but sometimes a learning activity you might be able to get through too. So don't stress too much about whether is this a learning activity or is it a lesson. It's sort of a blurry area. They are basically one and the same, but again, it depends on the year level. So when you think of what a learning activity is, it is one single aim that you have to achieve with your students. So if you are trying to teach them a skill, then that's your aim. If you are trying to teach them to know and understand, for example, the features of places and how they are cared for, that's a learning activity. If you were trying to do more than that, so for example, investigating features of places and how they can be cared for, and then also looking at the Aboriginal perspective, which may be another dot point, then that's moving into sort of a lesson. But don't stress too much about, is this a learning activity or is it a lesson? It is just an activity that you are designing with one sole aim, which is to have students know and understand a topic within a unit of work, and also to develop a skill. So just keep that in mind, those different places that you can use to have an example to help you. So in our section for this week, you're watching this overview video here. There's 1 lecture this week, which gives us a bit of a break from the, doubling up of lectures over the past couple of weeks. We've got that quiz to help you open up the topic notes there, and a couple of extra readings, which may also be in the reading list. I'm not too sure if I've added them in, they might be there. But just to draw your attention to Lavatt and Brady, who talk about values education. So you might want to think about those, especially because this week I might ask some questions on the discussion board about these two readings and the importance of values education. So even if you just have a quick look through that reading, that would be great. Some teaching strategies and practices. This is sort of an older document, but it's quite useful because it talks a little bit about analyzing values and what values analysis really is all about, and some examples in the classroom, some different ideas that you can use when teaching values education, which will be something that you do in the second assignment. So you can come back to this as well. So keep an eye out for that discussion forum post. So I think that's it from me for this weekly overview video. The only other thing that I will mention is that we still will have the online tutorial from 4 till 5 on Fridays. That will continue on. The on-campus and online daytime tutorial will be, I will update this by next week, but we may be running that at a different time. I'm not too sure. I just have to look to see what's available in the different rooms because things have shifted a little bit. So keep an eye out here in this section. I will update this and also put up an announcement, but it will definitely not be on Monday. So you don't have to worry about it being that day. So that's it for me. Have a really great week 5. Looking forward to talking all things geography. Bye, everyone.